An MMA star laughed at an old man sweeping the mats in his gym. Seconds later, the old man's grandson delivered a strike that made the champion collapse like a building with its foundations removed. "Don't talk to my grandfather that way." The words came not from Wei Chen, the 72-year-old janitor frozen mid-sweep, but from his 14-year-old grandson, Kai, standing in the doorway with his school backpack still slung over one shoulder. Derek the Hammer Morrison, the undefeated MMA champion who had moments earlier mocked the old man for being too slow to dodge a broom, turned with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "What did you say, kid?" "You heard me. Apologize to him." The gym went silent. Students stopped their heavy bag work and turned to stare. A teenage boy in a wrinkled school uniform had just challenged a man who'd won 23 consecutive professional fights. What happened next would leave an entire gym of hardened fighters questioning everything they knew about combat. This is the story of how a quiet boy guarding a family secret changed everything with a single strike that traveled less than 6 inches. Just before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. We love seeing how far these stories reach, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. Now, let's jump back in. Enjoy the story. A quiet boy's promise to his grandfather was about to be broken. For 40 years, the old man's secret had been safe, hidden behind a dustpan and mop. But tonight, in front of a crowd of cage fighters and kickboxers, that secret would be used to defend the last thing the old man had left: his dignity. The scent of rubber mats and tiger balm filled the Iron Fist MMA gym. It was a place of controlled aggression, a factory that produced fighters who believed pain was just weakness leaving the body. On the far wall, posters of Derek Morrison mid-knockout dominated the space, his tattooed arms frozen in victory poses. Below them, a row of championship belts gleamed under the harsh LED lights. The quiet of the 9 p.m. hour was usually a comfort to Wei Chen. At 72, Wei moved with a deliberate slowness that made him almost invisible. For the past 8 months, he had been the gym's janitor. He arrived just as the last class was finishing, his gray maintenance uniform blending in with the shadows. He would wait patiently for the fighters to leave before he began his work, transforming the space from a theater of controlled violence back into a clean, orderly facility. He took pride in his work. The mats had never been more meticulously cleaned, the mirrors never so free of handprints and sweat. But tonight was different. Derek Morrison had decided to stay late. The champion, with his shaved head and neck tattoos that crawled up to his jawline, was working the speed bag in the corner, his fists creating a rhythmic thunder that echoed through the space. Wei had tried to clean around him, moving quietly, efficiently, invisibly, but Derek had noticed him. And Derek, riding high on his recent title defense and surrounded by 3 of his training partners, was in a mood to entertain himself. "Hey, old man," Derek had called out, his voice carrying across the gym. "You move like you're underwater. How long does it take you to clean this place? 3 days?" Wei had said nothing, just continued pushing his mop across the mat, the bristles making soft whisking sounds against the rubber. "I'm talking to you, grandfather." Derek stepped away from the speed bag, wiping his hands on a towel. His training partners, sensing entertainment, had stopped their own workouts to watch. "You deaf or just rude?" "I hear you fine, Mr. Morrison." Wei's English carried the soft accent of someone who'd learned the language later in life. "I just have work to finish." "Work to finish," Derek mimicked, exaggerating the accent. His training partners laughed. "You know what I think? I think at your age you should be retired, sitting in a park somewhere, playing checkers, not dragging yourself around a fighter's gym like a ghost." Wei's hands had tightened slightly on the mop handle, but his face remained impassive. "I need the work, sir. I apologize if I'm in your way." "In my way?" Derek had stepped closer, and there was something predatory in his movement, the way a cat might approach a bird. "Nah, you're not in my way. You're just slow, like really slow. I bet you couldn't dodge a punch if your life depended on it. Hell, you probably couldn't dodge a broom." He'd reached out then, not violently, but with casual disrespect, and pushed the mop handle Wei was holding. The old man, caught off balance, had stumbled backward 3 steps before catching himself against the wall. The training partners had laughed harder, and that's when Kai had walked in. The boy was small for 14, slender in a way that suggested he hadn't hit his growth spurt yet. His black hair fell across his forehead, and his school uniform, a white shirt and dark pants, was rumpled from a long day. He carried his backpack in one hand and a paper bag, the kind from a convenience store in the other. He'd been bringing his grandfather dinner like he did every Tuesday and Thursday, but now he stood in the doorway, the paper bag crinkling in his grip as his knuckles went white, watching his grandfather lean against the wall while 3 men twice his size laughed at him. "Don't talk to my grandfather that way." Kai's voice wasn't loud. It didn't boom across the gym, but it cut through the laughter like a blade through silk, and suddenly the space went from jovial mockery to something else entirely. Derek turned slowly, his grin widening into something that showed too many teeth. "What did you say, kid?" "You heard me." Kai set down his backpack carefully, then the paper bag. His movements were precise, controlled. "Apologize to him." The room went silent. Even the hum of the ventilation system seemed to fade. Students who'd been pretending not to watch now openly stared. A child had just challenged Derek the Hammer Morrison, a man who'd put professional fighters in the hospital. Derek looked at his training partners, then back at Kai, and his laugh was the sound of someone who couldn't believe his luck. "Oh, this is perfect. The old man's got a bodyguard. What are you, his grandson? You gonna protect Grandpa's honor?" "I asked you to apologize." Kai's voice remained steady. Wei spoke then, urgently, in Mandarin. "Kai, no, leave it. Go home." But Kai answered in English, his eyes never leaving Derek. "He disrespected you, Ye. I can't leave it." Derek cracked his knuckles, the sound like small firecrackers in the quiet. "You know what, kid? I'll make you a deal. You want me to apologize? Make me. Step on the mat. Spar with Tyson. If you can land one clean hit, I'll apologize to your grandpa. Hell, I'll bow to him." One of the training partners, a heavyweight with cauliflower ears, spoke up. "Derek, come on, man. He's just a kid. A kid who's talking like he's got something to back it up." Derek stepped onto the mat, rolling his shoulders. "What do you say, grandson? You want that apology or not?" Kai looked at his grandfather. The old man's face was anguished, his hand outstretched in a gesture that said, "Please don't." But Kai had already made his decision. He kicked off his shoes, leaving them neatly by the edge of the mat, and stepped onto the rubber surface in his socked feet. "I accept." The gym erupted in murmurs. 3 more fighters had emerged from the locker room, drawn by the commotion, and now a crowd of perhaps a dozen people formed a loose circle around the mat. Someone pulled out a phone. Derek bounced on his toes, loose and confident. "Just so we're clear, kid, I'm not gonna go easy on you just because you're young. You step on this mat, you accept the consequences. I understand." What no one in that gym knew, what Wei Chen had spent 14 years trying to keep hidden, was that the boy standing across from Derek Morrison had been training since he was old enough to walk. Not the kind of training offered in modern MMA gyms, with their focus on octagon strategy and sponsorship deals. Kai had been taught in the old way, in the basement of his grandfather's small apartment, on a mat that had been carried across an ocean and through decades. He'd been taught by a man who'd once been known by a different name, in a different country, where his students had gone on to become legends. But that was a story Wei had sworn would die with him, a promise extracted by circumstances and sealed by time. Kai had sworn the same oath when he was 9 years old, his small hand in his grandfather's weathered one, speaking the words in Mandarin, "I will use these skills only to protect those who cannot protect themselves." As Kai took his stance, a neutral position with his weight evenly distributed, his hands loose at his sides, that promise was about to be broken. For the right reason, perhaps, but broken nonetheless. Derek didn't waste time. He closed the distance in 2 steps and threw a jab-cross combination, the kind of bread-and-butter striking that had opened up opponents for 23 professional fights. The strikes were fast, sharp, aimed at Kai's face with enough force to knock the boy unconscious if they landed clean. They didn't land at all. Kai shifted his weight, a tiny movement of his hips that took his head off the center line by perhaps 3 inches. Derek's jab cut through empty air where Kai's nose had been a fraction of a second earlier. The cross followed, and Kai swayed backward from the waist, his upper body tilting like a reed in wind, and the punch missed by the same. Impossible margin. Derek's fists hit nothing but air and possibility. The champion's eyes widened, just a flicker of surprise, and he reset his stance. "Lucky," he muttered. He threw a low kick, targeting Kai's lead leg, the kind of strike that numbed the thigh and robbed mobility. It was a good kick, textbook form, the kind of thing he'd thrown 1,000 times. Kai lifted his foot, a small, economical movement, and the kick passed beneath him. Before Derek could retract the limb, before he could reset his balance, Kai had stepped forward, closing the distance, and was suddenly inside Derek's guard. For one impossible moment, the boy was too close for Derek to strike, positioned at an angle that made every technique in the champion's arsenal useless. Then Kai stepped back out, returning to his neutral stance as if he'd merely been taking a stroll. The murmurs from the watching fighters grew louder. Derek's jaw tightened. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. He was a professional. This was a child. The math didn't work. He threw a combination 3 punches and a knee, the kind of sequence that had finished his last opponent in the second round. He put real speed behind it, real intentions. Kai moved through the attacks like water flowing around stones. He didn't retreat. He didn't run. He simply wasn't where the strikes were, his body repositioning with minimal effort, his breathing steady and calm. And when the combination ended, when Derek stood there breathing hard with his hands still raised, Kai spoke for the first time since stepping on the mat. "Your kicks are too wide. You're pulling your hip back before you throw, telegraphing your intention. And your hands drop when you go for the knee." A better fighter would have countered that. The gym went dead silent. Kai had just given Derek Morrison a technical critique, a breakdown of his form, like a teacher correcting a student. Derek's face flushed red. The veins in his neck stood out like cables. "You little..." He lunged forward, abandoning technique for raw aggression, throwing a wild haymaker that carried all his weight behind it. It was the kind of punch that could break orbital bones, shatter jaws, end fights before they started. Kai moved inside it. He stepped forward and to the left, a diagonal movement that brought him into the pocket, that dangerous space where 2 fighters' bodies nearly touched. Derek's haymaker whooshed over Kai's right shoulder, carrying the champion's momentum forward off balance. And Kai struck. His left hand moved first, open-palmed, deflecting Derek's extended arm at the wrist, guiding it away from his body. At the exact same instant, his right hand shot forward. It wasn't a punch, not in the way Derek would have understood it. There was no wind-up, no chambering of the fist. The movement originated from Kai's center, his hips rotating, his weight transferring, and all that energy traveled through his shoulder, down his arm into his hand. His fingers were held rigid and straight, thumb tucked, forming a spear point. He didn't aim for Derek's head or his chest. He aimed for a point 3 inches below the champion's sternum, where the ribs came together and the solar plexus lay unprotected. The strike landed with a sound that wasn't loud, but was sharp and final, like a stick breaking in a quiet forest. Derek Morrison froze. His entire body went rigid, locked in, placed by signals his nervous system couldn't interpret. His eyes went wide, pupils dilating. His mouth opened, but no sound came out because his diaphragm had spasmed, paralyzed by the precise strike, and he couldn't draw breath. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't do anything but stand there, a statue of a fighter, while his brain screamed at his body to respond. Kai stepped back, his hand returning to his side, his expression unchanged. 3 seconds passed. 4, 5. Then Derek's knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the mat, first to his knees, then forward onto his hands, gasping for air that wouldn't come, his face turning red, then purple. The watching fighters exploded into motion. 2 of them rushed forward, rolling Derek onto his side, yelling at him to breathe, to relax, to let it pass. Kai stood in the center of the mat, alone in the eye of the storm, and spoke quietly into the chaos. "Does anyone else want a lesson?" No one answered. The gym had become a cathedral of shock, every person frozen in the moment of witnessing something that shouldn't have been possible. A 14-year-old boy had just dropped a professional MMA champion with a single strike. Wei Chen stood by the wall, one hand covering his mouth, his eyes wide with an expression that mixed pride and terror in equal measure. The secret was out, the oath was broken, and nothing would ever be the same. In the corner of the gym, unnoticed by anyone except Kai, a young man with thoughtful eyes named Michael Chen, no relation, lowered his phone. He'd filmed the entire exchange, the whole thing, from Derek's mocking of the old man to the impossible strike that had ended the confrontation. He stared at his screen, then at Kai, then at the old man by the wall, and his expression shifted into something like recognition. He'd seen that style before, years ago, in grainy footage from the 80s and 90s, documentaries about martial arts masters, stories about a teacher in Hong Kong who'd trained fighters that went on to become legends of action cinema and international competition. A teacher who'd disappeared from public life decades ago. A teacher named Wei Chen. Michael's hands trembled as he held his phone, the weight of what he'd just witnessed settling over him like a heavy coat. On the mat, Derek finally managed to draw a ragged breath. The paralysis was passing, sensation returning to his limbs in painful prickles. He rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling, his expression a mixture of pain, humiliation, and disbelief. Kai walked to the edge of the mat, put his shoes back on, picked up his backpack and the paper bag with his grandfather's dinner, and walked over to Wei. "Ye," he said quietly in Mandarin. "Let's go home." Wei looked at his grandson, at the boy who'd just broken a promise that had shaped both their lives, and his eyes were wet. "Kai, he disrespected you. I couldn't let that stand." The old man reached out and gripped Kai's shoulder, his weathered hand strong despite his age. For a moment they stood there, grandson and grandfather, in a gym full of fighters who were all trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Then they walked toward the door. "Hey!" The voice came from Derek, who'd managed to sit up, still breathing hard, one hand pressed against his solar plexus. His face was pale, sweat streaming down his temples. Kai stopped and turned. Derek looked at him for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice had lost all its bravado. "Who taught you that?" Kai glanced at his grandfather, then back at Derek. "Someone who believes strength without honor is just violence." "That old man?" "That old man," Kai said quietly, "has forgotten more about fighting than you'll ever learn." Then he and Wei walked out into the November night, leaving behind a gym full of fighters who would spend the rest of the evening trying to explain to each other what they'd just seen. The video Michael had recorded would be uploaded 6 hours later, in the early morning hours when he couldn't sleep, when the weight of witnessing history became too heavy to carry alone. It would be viewed 47 times in the first hour. By morning, that number would be 12,000. By the end of the week, it would be 10 million. And Derek, the Hammer Morrison's life, would become a waking nightmare. The walk home took 20 minutes, through streets lit by sodium lamps that turned everything the color of old photographs. Wei and Kai didn't speak. The paper bag crinkled softly with each step, the only sound between them beyond the distant hum of traffic. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. The elevator had been broken for 2 years, so they climbed the stairs, Wei moving slowly, gripping the railing, Kai one step behind. Inside, the apartment was small but meticulously clean. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen barely large enough for one person, a living room dominated by a low table and 2 cushions. On the wall hung a single photograph in a simple frame. A much younger Wei Chen, perhaps in his 30s, standing in a dojo with 5 students. All of them wore white gi. All of them were bowing. Kai set the paper bag on the kitchen counter and began unpacking the food. Steamed dumplings, now cold, a container of rice, vegetables in brown sauce. His hands moved mechanically through the routine. Wei sat down at the low table, his movements careful, as if he'd aged another decade in the past hour. "Kai," he said finally, "we need to talk about what you did." "I know." Kai brought the food over, setting it between them with chopsticks and small plates. "I broke the promise." "You did." Wei picked up his chopsticks but didn't eat. "Do you understand why I made you swear that oath?" Kai sat down across from his grandfather. For a moment he was silent, remembering, He'd been 9 years old, small even for his age, coming home from school with a bruised cheek and split lip. 3 older boys had cornered him in the bathroom, taken his lunch money, pushed him into the wall when he'd tried to resist. Wei had seen the injuries, and his face had gone very still, the kind of stillness that suggested deep currents moving beneath a calm surface. "Ye," young Kai had said, tears streaming down his face. "Teach me to fight, please. I don't want to be weak anymore." Wei had looked at him for a long time. Then he'd led him down to the basement of their old house, the one they'd lived in before Wei's wife had passed, before they'd had to sell it and move to this smaller place. In that basement had been a mat, worn smooth by decades of use, and on the wall a photograph of a younger Wei surrounded by students whose names would later become famous. "I will teach you," Wei had said. "But first, you must understand what I'm really giving you." He'd knelt on the mat, gesturing for Kai to do the same. "The techniques I know are not for sport. They are not for competition. They were designed for one purpose, to stop an attacker permanently. Do you understand what that means?" Young Kai had nodded, not really understanding. "It means," Wei had continued, "that if you use these skills in anger, in pride, to prove yourself or to seek revenge, you could seriously hurt someone. You could kill someone. And that burden would stay with you for the rest of your life." He'd placed his hand over Kai's heart. "Power without wisdom is just destruction. Skill without compassion is just cruelty. I will teach you because I love you, because I want you to be safe. But you must promise me, truly promise me, that you will only use what I teach you to protect those who cannot protect themselves, never for pride, never for revenge, never to prove you are strong. Do you understand?" 9-year-old Kai, still crying, had nodded seriously. "I promise, Ye. Say it in Mandarin, make it real." And Kai had spoken the words, his child's voice solemn in the quiet basement. "I will use these skills only to protect those who cannot protect themselves." They'd sealed it with a bow, foreheads touching the mat, the old ritual of a promise between teacher and student. Now, 5 years later, sitting in their small apartment with cold dumplings between them, Kai met his grandfather's eyes. "I understand why you made me promise. You didn't want me to become someone who used violence casually, who saw these skills as a way to dominate others." He paused. "But Ye, he was hurting you. Not with his fists, but with his words, his disrespect. You've worked so hard, you've given up so much, and he was mocking you, pushing you, making you a joke in front of those men." "And what did you protecting my honor cost us?" Wei asked softly. "Kai, do you think that man will let this go? Do you think his pride will allow him to accept what happened?" Kai had no answer to that. Wei reached across the table and gripped his grandson's hand. "What you did came from love. I know that. But the world doesn't care about our intentions. It only cares about consequences. And I'm afraid the consequences of tonight are just beginning." They ate in silence, the food tasteless, both of them thinking about the phone recording, about the fighters who'd witnessed everything, about how fast stories spread in the age of the internet. But that night, exhausted and emotionally wrung out, they couldn't have imagined just how right Wei's fears would prove to be. Until now, Kai had been just another invisible kid at school, the quiet boy who did his homework and kept to himself. Derek Morrison had been a local celebrity, a fighter whose image was on billboards, whose name carried weight. But what no one knew was that quiet boy carried the legacy of one of Hong Kong's most legendary masters, a man who'd trained champions before walking away from it all. And now, as they finished their meal and prepared for bed, neither of them understood that the real fight was about to begin. The video went live at 3:47 a.m. Michael Chen, unable to sleep, had watched the footage 17 times on his phone, each viewing revealing new details. The precision of Kai's movements, the economy of motion, the strike itself, which had traveled less than 6 inches, but had dropped a professional fighter like a puppet with cut strings. He'd studied martial arts history as a hobby, fascinated by the old masters, the lineages that stretched back centuries. He'd seen that style before, in old tournament footage, in documentaries about the golden age of Hong Kong martial arts cinema. And he'd seen Wei Chen's name in the credits, in the acknowledgements, in the special thanks sections of interviews with famous action stars. Wei Chen, who'd trained Jackie, Chan's first stunt coordinator, who'd been a consultant on a dozen films, who'd produced fighters that went on to international fame, who'd disappeared from public life in the early 2000s, with rumors but no confirmed explanations. Wei Chen, who was now working as a janitor in an MMA gym in a mid-sized American city, pushing a mop and being mocked by fighters who didn't know they were standing in the presence of a living legend. Michael uploaded the video to 3 platforms simultaneously: YouTube, Twitter, and a popular MMA forum. He titled it simply, "14-year-old drops MMA champion with 1 strike." He added a description, context: champion was mocking the kid's grandfather, who works as a janitor at the gym. Watch till the end. This is real. Then he closed his laptop and tried to sleep. By the time he woke up 6 hours later, his phone was on fire with notifications. The video had been shared 3,000 times. Comments were flooding in, ranging from accusations of it being staged to frame-by-frame analysis of the technique. Someone had identified Derek Morrison, someone else had recognized the gym, and someone, a martial arts historian with 200,000 followers, had recognized the style. "That's Chen-style striking," the comment read. "Incredibly rare. Only a handful of people in the world can do that. And if that janitor is who I think he is, we're watching a master's grandson defend his honor. This is history." The comment had 5,000 likes. By noon, the video had 1 million views. By evening, it was trending. And Derek Morrison, scrolling through his phone in the gym's back office, watched his reputation crumble in real time. The comments were brutal. "Bro got humbled by a middle schooler. Maybe retire before the elementary kids get you. That old man's grandson just ended your career. This is what happens when ego writes checks your skills can't cash." His sponsors started calling. His manager started calling. A journalist from a major sports website requested an interview. His training partners were texting him, asking if he was okay, if the video was real, what happened. Derek sat in his office, staring at the screen, watching the moment of his humiliation replayed over and over, and something dark and poisonous bloomed in his chest. This wasn't over. This couldn't be over. That old man and his grandson had made him a laughingstock. They'd destroyed everything he'd built. His reputation, his intimidation factor, his aura of invincibility. All gone, reduced to a viral video of him gasping on the mat like a fish. They were going to pay for this. The harassment started small. 3 days after the video went viral, Wei arrived at the gym for his shift and found a note taped to the maintenance closet. "Your services are no longer required." No explanation, no severance. Just a note and an empty closet where his supplies used to be. Wei stood there for a long moment, the note trembling in his hand, understanding immediately what had happened. Derek owned a percentage of the gym. Derek had influence with the owner. Derek wanted revenge, and the easiest target was an old man's livelihood. Kai, when Wei told him that evening, felt fury rise in his chest like a living thing. "Yay, we can fight this. We can..." "Fight what?" Wei asked quietly. "He owns part of the business. They don't need a reason to let me go." "Then we'll find you another job. Something better." Wei smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. At 72, with my English, my lack of qualifications, the gym job was a blessing. Most places won't even interview someone my age. But Wei tried. He applied to 3 other gyms, 2 office buildings, a community center. Each place seemed interested until they called his references, until they heard his name, until someone, somewhere, made a phone call that changed everything. One manager was honest enough to tell him the truth. "Look, Mr. Chen, your work ethic seems great, but we heard you were involved in some kind of incident at your last place. An assault? We can't take that risk." An assault. Derek had poisoned the well, spreading a version of events where Wei was somehow at fault, somehow dangerous despite being the victim. 2 weeks after the video went viral, Wei had been rejected from 7 jobs. The rent was due in 10 days. They had enough money for food for maybe 2 weeks after that if they were careful. Kai watched his grandfather's shoulders begin to bow under the weight of it all, watched the light dim in his eyes, and felt a guilt so profound it physically hurt. "I did this," he said one night, sitting at their low table. "I broke the promise and now we're paying for it." "No." Wei's voice was firm despite his exhaustion. "Derek Morrison did this. His ego did this. You protected me. What he's doing now is a choice he's making out of spite." But Kai couldn't shake the feeling that his moment of pride, his need to defend his grandfather's honor, had set off a chain of events that was destroying both their lives. At school, Kai became even quieter, moving through his classes like a ghost. The video had made him briefly famous. Other students recognized him, pointed him out in hallways, but he avoided all attention, all questions. One person sought him out anyway. Michael Chen found him in the library during lunch period, sitting alone at a table in the back corner with a textbook he wasn't reading. "Kai?" Michael's voice was soft, respectful. "I'm Michael. I train at Iron Fist." "Well?" "Trained. Past tense now." Kai looked up, and recognition flickered across his face. "You were there." "I was." Michael sat down without invitation, but his posture was deferential, non-threatening. "I'm the one who filmed it, and I'm the one who uploaded the video." Kai's expression hardened. "So this is your fault?" "Maybe. Probably." Michael didn't flinch. "I thought people deserved to see the truth. I don't know what I thought, but I'm sorry if it made things worse for you and your grandfather." "Made things worse?" Kai's voice was controlled but laced with anger. "My grandfather lost his job. He can't find work anywhere. Derek has blacklisted him. We can't make rent. And you're sorry if it made things worse?" Michael absorbed this, his expression pained. "I didn't know Derek would retaliate. I didn't think. You didn't think at all." Silence stretched between them. In the library around them, students whispered and studied, unaware of the conversation happening in the back corner. Finally, Michael spoke again. "Your grandfather is Wei Chen. The Wei Chen. The one who trained in Hong Kong in the 70s and 80s. The one who produced some of the greatest fighters and coordinators of that era. The one who walked away from it all 20 years ago." Kai said nothing, but his silence was confirmation. Why is he working as a janitor? Why is someone with his skills, his legacy, cleaning gyms? "Because legacy doesn't pay rent," Kai said quietly. "Because fame in Hong Kong doesn't translate to America. Because my grandmother got sick, and the medical bills destroyed everything they'd saved. Because starting over in a new country at 60 is almost impossible. Because the only thing Ye has left is his dignity, and Derek Morrison took even that away from him." Michael nodded slowly, processing this. "Then let me help you get it back." "What?" "Derek is still bragging, still talking. He's telling everyone who'll listen that the video is fake, that it was staged, that you sucker punched him when he wasn't ready." Michael pulled out his phone. "He's posting on social media. He's doing interviews saying you're a fraud. He's trying to rebuild his reputation by destroying yours." So he's lying, and I have proof. More videos, footage from other nights, evidence of what he's really like. Michael leaned forward. "Kai, I know I screwed up. I know I made things worse, but let me help make it right. We can expose him, really expose him. Not just the fight, but everything. The harassment, the blacklisting, the lies. We can turn the story around." Kai studied the older teen's face, searching for deception, for ulterior motives. He found only earnestness and guilt. "Why would you help us?" Michael was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because I've trained for 6 years. I have a black belt in Taekwondo. I've competed in tournaments. I thought I understood martial arts. But watching your grandfather, watching you, I realized I don't understand anything. Real martial arts isn't about tournaments or viral videos. It's about what your grandfather has, what you have. Honor, discipline, the wisdom to know when to fight and when to walk away." He paused. "And when Derek started bragging, started lying about what happened, I realized that's the opposite of everything martial arts should be. So yeah, I want to help, because someone needs to." Kai considered this. Every instinct told him to refuse, to handle this alone, to not involve anyone else in the disaster his life had become. But they were running out of time, out of money, out of options. "What's your plan?" Michael's expression shifted into something determined. We build a case. We document everything Derek does, every lie, every piece of harassment, every attempt to damage your grandfather's reputation. We collect evidence, real evidence, and then we release it all at once. Make it impossible for him to spin the narrative. Make him face consequences for once in his life. That could take weeks. We have weeks? It was a question. We have 10 days before we can't make rent. After that, Kai shrugged. I don't know. Then we work fast. Michael stood. Meet me after school. Bring your grandfather. We'll start. Today. That evening, the three of them sat in Michael's basement, which his parents had converted into a training space. Mats covered the floor, a heavy bag hung in the corner, and a laptop sat on a folding table. Michael had been busy. He'd already compiled a folder of Derek's social media posts, screenshots of his lies, timestamps showing contradictions in his story. Wei looked at the evidence, then at Michael. Young man, why are you doing this? Because it's right, Michael said. Simply. And because watching Kai defend you made me realize what martial arts should actually be about. I want to help. Wei studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Thank you. Over the next week, they worked together. Michael set up a social media account dedicated to documenting Derek's harassment. He filmed Wei attempting to get jobs, recording the rejections, the vague explanations that didn't quite make sense. He reached out to other members of the gym, finding 2 more. People who'd been mistreated by Derek, who were willing to speak on camera about his pattern of bullying. Kai, meanwhile, discovered something unexpected. He was good at this kind of strategy. Planning, thinking 3 steps ahead, anticipating Derek's next move and preparing counter moves. It was like sparring, but with information instead of strikes. Derek, for his part, kept talking. He gave an interview to a local sports podcast, claiming the video was edited, that he'd been recovering from a previous injury, that the kid had caught him off guard. He posted gym selfies with captions about real strength and not letting haters win. Each lie was documented, each contradiction noted, each piece of evidence added to the growing case. Whenever I share one of these, I hope it gives you a chance to step out of the everyday and just drift for a bit. I'd love to know what you were doing while listening. Maybe relaxing after work, on a late-night drive, or just winding down. Drop a line in the comments. I really do read them all. Have you ever had to defend someone you loved, knowing it might cost you everything? What would you do if someone tried to destroy your family's livelihood? The trap was set on day 8, 2 days before rent was due. Michael created a post on a popular MMA forum, written from a fake account, asking, whatever happened with that video of Derek Morrison getting dropped by a kid? Was it real or fake? The post gained traction quickly with dozens of responses. Some defended Derek, some mocked him. The debate raged across multiple pages, and then Derek himself showed up. Using his verified account, he posted a long response. That video was 100% staged. The kid's grandfather is a con artist who used to claim he trained famous fighters in Hong Kong, but it's all lies. I was helping them create viral content for their YouTube channel. The whole thing was choreographed. I'm disappointed people fell for it. The post had hundreds of upvotes within an hour. Derek's fans rallied around him, attacking anyone who suggested otherwise. Michael waited 6 hours, letting the false narrative spread, letting Derek commit fully to his lie. Then he released everything. A new video titled, "The Truth About Derek Morrison, A Pattern of Abuse." It was 20 minutes long, meticulously edited, devastating in its completeness. It started with the original video, but with added context. Footage from earlier that night showing Derek mocking Wei, pushing the mop, his training partners laughing. It showed the full exchange, proving Derek had instigated everything. Then came the interviews. 2 former gym members talking about Derek's bullying. One woman describing how he'd mocked her weight during a class until she'd quit, devastated. Then came the documentation of the harassment, Wei's job search, the rejections, the voicemail from one honest manager explaining they'd heard Wei was dangerous, phone records showing calls from the gym to Wei's prospective employers, right before each rejection. Then came Derek's lies, side-by-side comparisons of his different versions of events, video timestamps proving his contradictions. And finally, the kicker. Michael had reached out to 3 legitimate martial arts historians, people with credentials and reputations. Each of them appeared in the video, confirming Wei Chen's identity, his legacy, his legitimacy. One of them showed photographs from the 80s. Wei with Jackie Chan's stunt coordinator, Wei at tournaments, Wei being honored by a Kung Fu association. Wei Chen is the real deal, one historian said to the camera. One of the last true masters of his generation. If Derek Morrison had known who he was insulting, he never would have opened his mouth. The video ended with a simple text card. Strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. Michael uploaded it at 8 p.m. on a Thursday night. By midnight, it had 100,000 views. By morning, it was trending again, but this time the narrative was different. The comments were unanimous. Derek is a fraud and a bully. That old man is a legend and Derek tried to destroy him. This is career-ending stuff. I hope Wei Chen sues him into oblivion. But more than comments, there were consequences. Derek's main sponsor, a supplement company, dropped him by 6 a.m., issuing a statement about not aligning with their values. The gym ownership issued a statement saying Derek's partnership was under review and that Wei Chen was welcome to return to work at any time with our sincere apologies. A GoFundMe appeared, created by someone neither Wei nor Kai knew, titled Help Wei Chen and His Grandson. It raised $15,000 in the first day. And Derek Morrison, watching his world collapse for the second time in 2 weeks, finally went silent. His social media accounts went dark. His podcast interview was pulled. His training partners started posting about new beginnings and moving forward, carefully avoiding mentioning his name. Until now, Derek Morrison had been untouchable, a local celebrity whose ego was enabled by everyone around him. Wei and Kai had been just obstacles in his path, people to be crushed and forgotten. But what Derek hadn't understood was that truth, when wielded with precision and patience, strikes harder than any fist. And now, as the evidence spread across the internet, as his sponsors abandoned him and his reputation turned to ash, he was learning a lesson Kai had known since he was 9 years old. Real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about standing up when everything says you should stay down. The call came from the gym owner on day 10. The morning rent was due. Mr. Chen, this is Patricia Reeves. I own Iron Fist Gym. Her voice was professional but warm. I want to apologize personally for what happened. Derek Morrison no longer has any association with our facility. We'd very much like you to return with a raise and with our guarantee that you'll be treated with the respect you deserve. Wei, holding the phone in his kitchen, glanced at Kai sitting across the table. Thank you, Ms. Reeves, but I'll need to think about it. Of course, take all the time you need. And Mr. Chen? I've been doing some research. I had no idea who you were. If I had known, well, I'm deeply sorry it took a viral video for me to see the truth. After he hung up, Wei sat in silence for a long moment. You should take it, Kai said. We need the money. Do we? Wei gestured to the laptop on the counter, where the GoFundMe page was still climbing. Strangers have given us more than I could earn in a year. That's charity. And the job is pity. Wei shook his head. I don't want either, Kai. I want what I had before all of this. Quiet dignity. Honest work. Peace. Then what do we do? Wei smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it reached his eyes. We think about what we actually want, what we're actually good at. Maybe it's time to stop hiding. 3 days later, Wei Chen and Kai held a press conference of sorts, organized by Michael and held in a community center. It wasn't large, just a dozen local reporters and a few interested community members, but it was enough. Wei spoke, his English careful but clear, about his history, his training in Hong Kong, his work with film coordinators and fighters, his decision to leave it all behind when his wife got sick, choosing family over fame. I came to America for medical treatment my wife could not get in Hong Kong, he explained. We spent everything. When she passed, I stayed because this was where she had spent her last years. I took work as a janitor because at my age, with my qualifications, it was what I could find. I was not ashamed of the work. But I was ashamed when someone tried to take my dignity. A reporter asked, "Will you press charges against Derek Morrison for harassment?" Wei considered this. No. He has lost enough. His reputation, his sponsors, his place at the gym. What more would punishment add? He made choices driven by ego. Now he lives with consequences. That is punishment enough. What about you? Another reporter turned to Kai. That strike you used, the one that ended the fight, where did you learn it? Kai looked at his grandfather, who nodded permission. My yeye has been training me since I was 9, not for sport, not for competition, for understanding. He taught me that real martial arts is about discipline, respect, and protecting those who can't protect themselves. He paused. I broke a promise when I fought Derek Morrison. I swore I'd only use what I learned for protection, never for pride. But when he pushed my grandfather, when he mocked him, I couldn't stay quiet. Do you regret it? Kai was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the video, the consequences, the harassment, the near eviction, all of it. I regret that it became necessary. But no, I don't regret defending my yeye. Some things are worth breaking promises for. Wei reached over and gripped his grandson's shoulder, pride evident in his weathered face. The interview footage was shared widely, but this time the narrative was entirely under their control. No more viral videos of humiliation. Just a grandfather and grandson speaking their truth, letting the world see them as they actually were. The offers started coming in almost immediately. A traditional martial arts school across town reached out, asking if Wei would consider teaching a weekly class in classical kung fu. A film production company, working on a martial arts documentary, wanted to interview him about the golden age of Hong Kong action cinema. A local college asked if he'd guest lecture in PE, their film studies program. And the community center, the same one where they'd held the press conference, offered him a steady job. Lead instructor for their youth self-defense program, teaching underprivileged kids the fundamentals of discipline and protection. The pay was modest but fair. The hours were reasonable, the work was meaningful. Wei accepted. As for Derek Morrison, he left town 3 weeks after Michael's video went viral. No announcement, no goodbye, just a closed gym, office and a forwarding address in another state, where maybe his reputation hadn't quite reached yet, where maybe he could start over. Some of his former students spoke about him in the past tense, their voices carrying a mix of relief and disappointment. They'd looked up to him once, seen him as the pinnacle of what a fighter could be. Now they understood he'd been a cautionary tale, a warning about what happens when skill outpaces character. One evening, a month after everything had changed, Kai and Wei sat in their apartment with dinner between them. The same low table, the same small space, but somehow it felt different now, lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Yay, Kai said quietly. Did I do the right thing? Wei set down his chopsticks. You want the truth? Always. You broke your promise. That was real. That happened. Wei's voice was gentle but firm. But you broke it for the right reason. To protect someone who couldn't protect themselves. Me. You could have protected yourself. Could I? Wei smiled. At my age, with my body, against a professional fighter in his prime. Maybe once, Kai. But not anymore. My skills are for teaching now, not for doing. You protected me because I needed protecting. That's not breaking the promise, that's fulfilling it. But look at everything that happened. The harassment, the job losses, the near eviction, all of it because I couldn't control myself. No. Wei's voice sharpened. All of that happened because Derek Morrison chose to be cruel. Twice. Once when he mocked me, and again when he couldn't accept the consequences of his cruelty. You are not responsible for his choices, Kai. You are only responsible for your own. And your choice was to stand up for someone you love. That is not shame, that is honor. Kai felt something unknot in his chest, a tension he'd been carrying for weeks finally releasing. The promise, Wei continued, was never about never fighting. It was about fighting for the right reasons. about understanding that power comes with responsibility. You learned that lesson earlier than I expected, and in a harder way than I would have chosen. But you learned it. And now, when you continue training, you'll do so with wisdom earned through experience. Will we still train, even with everything that's happened? Especially because of everything that's happened. Wei smiled. But now, maybe we don't hide it. Maybe we share it, carefully with people who will use it the way it's meant to be used, like those kids at the community center, like students who want to learn for the right reasons. They finished their meal in companionable silence, and later that night, they went down to the building's basement where the superintendent had given them permission to set up a small training area. Wei's old mat was rolled out on the concrete floor. The photograph of his old students hung on the exposed brick wall. And there in the quiet space, grandfather and grandson began to move through forms, through katas, through the flowing sequences that had been passed down through generations. Kai's movements were sharper now, more confident, tempered by experience. Wei's movements were slower but no less precise, each gesture carrying decades of understanding. Two figures moving in synchronization, connected by blood and legacy, and a promise that had been broken and remade into something stronger. Upstairs, Michael Chen sat at his laptop, editing footage for the martial arts documentary he'd been helping produce. He'd become something of an unofficial archivist for Wei's story, documenting the classes at the community center, interviewing the old master about techniques and philosophy, preserving knowledge that might otherwise be lost. In another state, Derek Morrison sat in a new gym, his new students unaware of his history, his past carefully omitted from his bio. He was, quieter now, more careful, but the lessons hadn't quite taken root. Not yet, maybe never. Some people are capable of change. Others simply move their problems to new locations. Back at the apartment building, in the basement training space, Wei paused in the middle of a form and looked at his grandson. Kai, do you remember what I told you when you were 9? About power and wisdom? You said power without wisdom is just destruction. Yes. And do you understand it now? Really? Understand it? Kai thought about the fight, the strike that had traveled 6 inches and changed everything, the viral video, the consequences that rippled out from one moment of action. I think so. Power is easy. Anyone can learn to strike hard. But knowing when to strike and why and what will happen after, that's wisdom. And wisdom is harder than any technique. Wei smiled, his eyes crinkling with pride. Now, you're ready to teach others. Not the techniques yet. You're still too young for that. But the philosophy, the understanding, that you can share. The next day, Kai visited the community center for the first time, observing his grandfather's class with a group of 12 kids, ages 8 to 14, from neighborhoods where discipline and focus were luxuries many couldn't afford. Wei moved among them with patience and kindness, correcting stances, demonstrating breathing techniques, teaching them that martial arts began not with the fists, but with the mind. Before you can defend yourself, he told them, you must understand yourself, your anger, your fear, your pride. These are the real opponents. Physical attackers are just circumstances. But your own emotions, those are battles you'll fight every day of your life. The kids listened with varying degrees of attention, some focused, others distracted, all of them gradually being shaped by exposure to someone who believed in them. At the end of class, one small girl, perhaps 9 years old, approached Wei hesitantly. Mr. Chen, my brother says fighting is wrong, that people who know how to fight are dangerous. Wei knelt down to her level, his old knees protesting but his expression warm. Your brother is half right. Fighting is wrong when it comes from anger or pride, but knowing how to fight and choosing not to, that's not dangerous, that's powerful. The most dangerous person in a room is not the one who wants to fight. It's the one who could win but chooses peace instead. The girl thought about this, nodded seriously and ran off to join her friends. Kai watched this exchange and felt something shift in his perspective. His grandfather wasn't just teaching self-defense, he was teaching life philosophy, wrapped in the language of martial arts. And maybe that was the real legacy, the one that mattered more than techniques or viral videos or vindication. That night, as they walked home through streets now familiar and safe, Wei spoke quietly. "In Hong Kong, when I was young, my master told me something I didn't understand for many years. He said, 'The best fight is the one that never happens. The best technique is the one you never use. The best student is the one who outgrows the need to prove themselves.'" He glanced at Kai. "I think you're beginning to understand that now. I still have a long way to go." We all do. That's the point. Mastery isn't a destination, it's a direction. You keep walking toward it your whole life. They climbed the 3 flights of stairs to their apartment, Wei moving carefully, Kai matching his pace. Inside, Kai made tea while Wei settled at the low table with a book, a biography of an old master from the 1940s. The photograph on the wall, the one of young Wei with his students, seemed to glow in the lamplight. "Ye." Kai brought over 2 cups of tea. "Do you ever regret leaving Hong Kong? Leaving behind the life you had?" Wei considered the question. "Seriously, sometimes, usually late at night when memory becomes too loud. But then I think about what I gained. More time with your grandmother before she passed, the chance to raise you, the ability to pass on what I know to a new generation, in a new place. Regret is just another form of pride, Kai. It says, I deserved better. But maybe this is exactly what I deserved. Maybe this is exactly where I was meant to be. Teaching kids at a community center instead of training. Champions? Who says those kids won't become champions? Maybe not in tournaments, but in life. Maybe I'll teach a kid who grows up to be a doctor, and in a moment of crisis, the discipline I taught her will help her save a life. Maybe I'll teach a boy who becomes a father, and the patience I showed him will help him raise his own children with kindness. Impact isn't always measurable in trophies. Kai sipped his tea, letting this wisdom settle into his bones. Besides, Wei added, with a slight smile, I taught one champion already. He dropped a professional fighter with one strike. That's not bad for an old man with a mop. They both laughed, the sound warm and genuine, the apartment filling with a lightness that had been absent for too long. Outside, the city moved through its evening rhythms. Inside, a grandfather and grandson sat together, drinking tea, sharing silence, connected by something deeper than blood or legacy or viral videos. Connected by the understanding that true strength isn't about how hard you can strike, but about how resiliently you can stand in the light, armed with nothing but the truth. Weeks turned into months. The viral video faded from public consciousness, replaced by newer controversies and fresher outrages, but the changes it had sparked remained. Wei's classes at the community center grew. Word spread about the old master who taught with kindness and wisdom, who never raised his voice, but whose students walked a little taller, breathed a little easier, carried themselves with quiet confidence. Michael graduated and started film school, but continued documenting Wei's teaching, building an archive of techniques and philosophy that would outlive them all. Kai returned to being invisible at school, but it was a different kind of invisibility now. Not the invisibility of someone hiding, but the invisibility of someone who didn't need to be seen to know their own worth. And on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, he still brought his grandfather dinner, the paper bag crinkling in his hands as he walked through familiar streets. But now, instead of eating in quiet exhaustion, they ate and then trained in the basement space that had become a sanctuary, continuing the work of passing knowledge from one generation to the next. One Thursday evening, 6 months after everything had changed, Wei finished a form and sat down on the mat, breathing carefully. Kai, come sit. His grandson settled across from him, cross-legged, attentive. There's something I want to give you. Wei reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn black belt. The fabric faded from years of use, the edges frayed. This was my master's belt. He gave it to me when I left Hong Kong, said it represented not rank but responsibility, the responsibility to pass on what I'd learned to someone worthy. He held it out. I'm giving it to you now, not because you've mastered all the techniques. You're 14, you have decades of learning ahead of you, but because you've mastered something more important, you understand why these skills exist. You understand the weight of them. Kai took the belt with trembling hands. It was lighter than he expected, the fabric soft with age. Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for this. No one ever is. That's the point. Readiness isn't about knowing everything. It's about being willing to keep learning while you teach others. Wei placed his hand over Kai's, over the belt. You defended me when I needed it. You faced consequences with courage. You found a way to make things right without more violence. These are the marks of someone who understands the art. So yes, you're ready, not to stop learning, but to start passing it on. That weekend, Kai assisted his grandfather's class for the first time, not as a student but as a junior instructor, helping the younger kids with their stances, offering encouragement, demonstrating techniques with the careful control of someone who knew their power. The worn black belt was tied around his waist, and if some of the kids noticed it wasn't new, if they saw the faded fabric and frayed edges, they understood without being told that this was something earned, something precious, something passed down through generations of students who had all learned the same lesson. Strength without honor is just violence, but strength with wisdom is protection. And that's where we'll end the story for now. Whenever I share one of these, I hope it gives you a chance to step out of the everyday and just drift for a bit. I'd love to know what you were doing while listening. Maybe relaxing after work, on a late-night drive, or just winding down. Drop a line in the comments. I really do read them all. And if you want to make sure we cross paths again, hitting like and subscribing makes a huge difference. We are always trying to improve our stories, so feel free to also drop your feedback in the comment section below. Thanks for spending this time with me. If this story moved you, write belt in the comments. This is a story from Underdog Dojo.